Today we are going to get acquainted with WordPress page builders. For WordPress, we have two very famous page builders, Elementor and Composer. In terms of advancement, functionality, and the plugins we can install for it, Elementor is much superior to Composer. Our decision and preference is always to work with Elementor because it is much easier to customize and provides better output for us. Usually, there are themes that are written with Elementor. Elementor is offered in two versions. The first version is free, and I can install it from the repository, just as I installed it in the previous session. And the second version is Elementor Pro, which needs to be purchased and is not available in the repository. You can buy it from Artil, Jacket, or Simfars. We will provide the download link for Elementor Pro in the caption so you can use it. When I install Elementor, I need to configure some settings for it. The first setting is that I can choose its post types and where Elementor should be activated for me and used. Elementor itself has a set of default fonts and colors that we usually don't need, so we always disable them in the settings. Now, what do these page builders do for us? When we want to design a page or even design a landing page, we either have to code it or we have to use it. Or in the template we have, use the format of that template. To be able to create a design for ourselves, we need to design a landing page and execute it with a page builder like Elementor. In this section, we want to get familiar with Elementor's tools and see what tools it has and how we can work with them. To be able to create a landing page and a page, we need to go to the Pages section and create a new page for ourselves. We name our page Landing and do a test. We can also change its URL or its slug. I set it to Sample Landing in English. I set the template to Elementor Canvas. I can choose several templates when I install Elementor, which creates for my page. Whenever I am going to design a landing page, I always set it to Elementor Canvas. When I save this, you can see up here it says Elementor for me, indicating that you can edit it with Elementor. I click on Edit with Elementor and enter the design environment with Elementor. When the Elementor panel opens for me, a series of tools are placed on the right side that I can work with. Some of them are basic and some others are for the Pro version. And there are also some general items in the tab. On the right side, my widgets are technically located, and on the left side is the environment where I am supposed to build that page or landing page. Now, let's get familiar with the widgets it provides me with, and I can design a page. On the right side, the first widget available is the container widget. For every section I want to use on my website, I need to create that section. What I can do is drag this widget from the right, drag the container widget, and bring it to the place I want, or click on the plus sign and select the number of items I want, the number of columns or rows I need based on my requirements. These can be fully customized and adjusted. Now I will place and create a container subsection for myself. Whenever I click on any widget, on my page, the settings related to that widget, will appear on the right for me. The first setting it offers me is in 3 tabs: Layout, Style, and Advanced. Almost every widget I open has these 3 tabs, but the Layout and Style sections might differ when I'm about to create a container. This means I want to create a section, place content on the right, content in the middle, and another content on the left. For the container, the first topic it brings up is the container width. It asks how you want the section you created to be. Do you want it to be boxed, or full width? I can choose. In the next sections, I can adjust the width that I can also change for the section. Now by default, It's set to 1140. In general, if you want to change your width, either set it to boxed or full width. Preferably don't set the width manually because it can cause issues with responsiveness and the mobile version. So the next thing is the min height, which means I can define the height of this section in its minimum state. For example, say the minimum should be 400 pixels. Whenever I need to specify dimensions, font size, or any size, it offers me different units. Right here, for instance, there are pixels, EM, rem, VH, each of which has its own application. We use them wherever necessary. So if we need to define a specific height for our section, I use min height. The next items are related to display direction, where I can specify the direction or justify the content, or even determine how this item should appear. The next part is wrap, where I can define the spacing between rows and columns, and the final step, which is also referred to as wrap. I can define that if the width of these boxes within this container exceeds a certain limit, they should move to the next line, and not all be displayed in one place, or they can all be displayed in one place. There is also an advanced options section, where we can define overflow and HTML tag for it. The second tab we have is the Style tab. Anything related to the visual aspects of my landing or that section is in the Style section. The first step is the Background section, which says you can define a background for this section. It can be customized for both the normal state and the hover state. So, I can set it so that in the normal state my color is white, and when my mouse hovers over it, the color changes to red. Now if we see when I hover, my color changes to red. I can change the colors for both, but I want to say that I don't need a hover. In the normal section, I can set any color I want for it. I can even place an image for it. Indeed, any image I need, I can set as a background. The image I place gives me a series of settings, just asking how the image size should be. As I mentioned in the media settings section of WordPress, every image we upload in WordPress is loaded in several sizes and cropped. It asks me which size I want to give it to you in. Do you want it in thumbnail size or others? Usually, when I want to set it as a background, I use the full size, or I say display the image in the same size I uploaded it. The next part is how my image is positioned in this section. My image might be larger than my section, so I can specify how the rest of it should be displayed. For example, if it's center or both stretched and aligned, I can customize this based on my needs. The next part is the attachment section, where I can set it as fixed or scroll. If it's fixed, when I scroll, my image moves up and down. The next part is the repeat section. In the repeat section, I can specify whether if my image is smaller than the size I have, it should repeat or not. By default, it repeats. I can set it to repeat or not repeat at all, or to repeat only along the X or Y axis. It can be the display size, meaning the display type of that axis. I can use it in several modes, set it to cover, and say stretch my image as much as possible to fill the entire section with my image. Or I can set it to contain, meaning only display the image size within that section. Or it can be custom, where I can increase or decrease it. When I set up my image settings, in addition to the image or color that I can apply, I also have a few other options. You can definitely have a gradient background, meaning from a darker shade to a lighter one, which I can now choose the color for, any color that I have in mind. The position of the image can be increased or decreased, and I can customize my gradient. The next section is video. I can add a video either from YouTube or by uploading a direct link on my own host and placing the link here. In this section, my video will play, And there is also the option to add a slideshow in that section where I can select several images and say, okay, these should be displayed with a title. Display all these images for me with the title slideshow, which also gives me some settings, like what the transition should be. For example, whether it should fade when changing or move up and down. And I can also define its timing. You see, this image in the background is changing because I have defined a slideshow for the section. I can use any of these features as needed. The next setting available in the Style tab is the gradient overlay. This means that in addition to the text or video I place, I can also add an overlay or a color on top of it. I can say, for example, put a black or red color for me with a specific transparency or opacity. I might want to place an image and add a light color on top of it and write text over it. This section is useful for me. And it also has a filter and blend section that can affect the color or the image I have. The next setting is the border, which is for anything I want to outline. Around any element, we call it a border. And it has different modes, again with normal and hover states. I can specify that the normal state should be like this, and when I hover, a different color appears for it. It has a border type, and I can set it to solid, double, dotted, or dashed. I want to say, for example, if it sets a border of a specific pixel for me. Now, I've put a border around this container. I can change the color of this border, and even change the display type of this border based on the style I have and the color I need for it. The next part in the border is the border radius. What does border radius mean? It means I can round or curve the corners of my image. I can say, for example, 50 pixels from both sides for me. Around this section, I have, which in CSS terminology is called border radius, and box shadow. Guys, what does box shadow mean? It means I can give a shadow to any element. I want to give a very prominent shadow to this element now, so we can feel what's happening to it. I say I want a border, now from the left or from the top, and what size should it be on the bottom, right and left? Whether it should be more or less displayed on this side or that side, I can make adjustments. Similarly for the top and bottom, I can even blur it, lighten it, choose the color of my border based on my needs. And if I don't need it and want to deactivate it, I click on this option, and the next section I have is the shape divider, where I can make some changes for the top or bottom of the element I'm using. I can add a new element for the colors and things I want. I can place a new shape at the top or bottom of that section, which, if you look, has both a top and a bottom. And based on the designs it has, I can adjust the top or bottom. Now I am putting this spirit in a pre-advanced and shapeless state. Guys, the last part becomes advanced almost for everyone. The elements, sections, and widgets have the same settings. It tells me that you can define margin and padding. In coding terminology, the distance of any element from the outside is called margin, and the distance of any element from the inside is called padding. So if I want to give an element I created some distance from the right side from the outside, I can give it a margin. Or from the top or bottom. So the outside distance is margin and the inside distance is padding. I want to set it 100 pixels from the top. You see, it's also spacing from inside the element. Settings related to alignment and order, like how it should be displayed, what its size should be, and I can set its position to absolute or fixed, which we'll get to. What is the purpose of these for us? The next part is motion effects, where I can define an effect for when that section loads, or when reaching that section. I can choose whichever I have in mind in the animation section. And I can also define the time and type of its duration. The next part is the transform section, where I can perform a series of actions like rotating it, meaning I can rotate that section or element I have. I can change its offset, adjust its scale, skew it, and even flip it, from top to bottom or left to right. The next part is related to responsiveness, or the mobile version, which tells me, hey, you have a series of elements and you can use this element in your desktop or mobile mode. For example, if I create a section just for mobile, I can hide it on the desktop from this part and only see it on mobile, or vice versa. I can make this section only for desktop mode and not want it on mobile, so I can hide it on mobile and tablet. The next part is the attribute section, which we can't use in the free version. In this way, I can add a data attribute to that section, but I'm not dealing with it right now. The custom CSS section is also in the Pro version, where I can write a style for the section or widget I'm using. We'll get to how we can apply this style later. This becomes my first widget, which is the container that I use to organize. If I'm going to create a page, each of these pages has a series of containers. For example, I created a container on this page where I want to place content on the right side and different content on the left side. So I can come and choose a dual container. Containers are the most important part with which I build the structure of my landing page or site. Later on in landing page design, we'll learn how to do this. The next elements we have are heading elements. I can choose any type of title I have in mind from the title section. The first step says, "Sir, write the title or the thing you want to display for me." For example, I can go to the course section. It says, "Sir, do you want to link the title or element you placed? If needed, I can link it here." It asks how the size should be, small or medium or large. Usually, if we want to define the size, we don't use this size section. Vous indiquez, and in the Style tab, we can change the font size. The next element is the HTML tag. It asks, "Sir, what should be the display type of this tag?" I can display it from tag H1 to H6, which are related to SEO and the appearance of the website, allowing me to make it smaller or larger. And the next part is its alignment, the display position, where I can specify whether it should be centered, right aligned, justified, or left aligned. The next tab I have is the Style tab, which allows me to make some changes. It says, "Sir, you can set a color for this title you created." I can set its color to any color I need. It says you can define typography for it. What does that mean? It means, "Sir, can we change its font family?" In Elementor, we don't have Persian fonts, and we have to do this with a plugin, but we hit the default font as a workaround. It says you can choose the size of this title. As we said, wherever it is supposed to give us a size or dimension, it also provides the unit of measurement, which again here is pixels, EM, rem, and other units, and we usually work with pixels. It says, "I want you to set a title for me at 40 pixels and make some other changes, like how the weight of my font should be, whether it should be bold or not, and I can choose its transform." Now, it might not work well in Persian, for example. I can put an English text and say, "Display everything in uppercase or lowercase." The discussion is about the underline of my text, which we actually call a cha decoration, and I can change it to underline it, overline it, or line through it. We can define each of these. And the next topic is line height, where I can increase or decrease the spacing between lines. This means if this segment jumps, how much distance should there be between the first and second segments? The next option is the spacing between letters, or the spacing between words, which I can define. Usually in Persian, we don't change the spacing between letters because all the words are connected. But we can change the spacing between words based on our needs. So this part is also typography, where I can change the font, size, and weight of a text or title. Text, stroke, where I can outline the text I'm working on with any color I prefer, allows me to create a line. I can also apply a second stroke to that text. The next part is text shadow, or the shadow that I will apply to the text. We mentioned that we can add shadows to elements. If the element is something other than text, it's called a box shadow. If it's text, it's called a text shadow. Here, I can adjust its settings in the same way. Let's see what color the shadow will display for me. And the blend mode is also a type of display that I can use. Based on the third tab I have, I can again adjust the settings related to margin and padding that we know, its alignment, position, display type, and other elements that can be changed at the end like color. I can change its animation, transform it, use a background, and make it responsive. This becomes our text marker again, and the next marker becomes our image marker. I can add an image wherever I need. I just need to drag the image here and select the type of image. It is. Now this is its size, and we place it in the display position if we need to. If we want to add a caption, we can provide a caption and give an explanation for it. If it needs to be linked somewhere or displayed as a pop-up for us, or even as a lightbox, we can use this section so that when I hover over the image, it displays the image as a pop-up for me. In the Style tab, I can define the width. And maximum width of that image, for example, I can say that my image should be 50% or 20%. Or even its max width, which is 32%. So it doesn't exceed this max. I can also define the height of the image. Next, when you want to define the width or height for an image, choose only one of them, meaning either choose width or height. If you select both, the image will get distorted and messed up. In the next setting, I can adjust the opacity of my image, meaning I can make it lighter or darker. The opacity I have, the filters I need, and the border I can apply to it. In the advanced section, just like in other areas, I can use margin, padding, and alignment. The next element we have is the text editor, meaning I can write text, and it provides me with an editor, where I can do whatever text I have in mind. In the settings of this first section, we can define how the words are displayed, meaning how many. Content it displays for me, which we usually set to default, or we can define the spacing for it. The second tab we have is exactly like the title. We define its alignment, its color, and the typography it has. We can define it, and the text shadow advance is exactly the same. All the settings are available here for us. The next element we are working with is the shower element, where I can define a button, define a call to action, where I can choose its type and its color changes. Again, we do not use this section to change the color, and we set it to default. I can write the text inside that button. For example, view. Anything I have in mind, I can define a link for that. Button, choose how the button itself is displayed, and select its alignment, whether it should be left, right, center, or if I set it to justify, it will take the full width. We don't change the size from here. I can use an icon for the button that I'm going to define. I can use SVG icons that I download and upload here, or use the icons that it provides for me. And if we need an ID, which we will get to later, I can define an ID for it. The next tab is Style, again giving me some visual changes, like choosing the typography, what the font should be, defining the text shadow it needs, and I can define the background of this button both in the default state and in the hover state. For example, when I hover over it, in the color section, I can define that when I hover, its color changes to blue. I can add animation, so that when I hover, an animation occurs. Define a border for it, and in the advanced section, use its margin, padding, and alignment. These 3 or 4 elements that we have are the most commonly used elements that we work with. And to get familiar with WordPress and Elementor, we need to know them. Each element that I open provides me with a series of edits and settings, which are in 3 sections: layout, style, and advanced. Each feature we open has these 3 tabs, but the capabilities and settings are different. So in this section, we learned that we can work with page builders like Elementor and what widgets Elementor has. In the next sessions, we will learn how we can now design a landing page with Elementor. Stay with us in this session as we are going to learn together how we can design a series of landing pages. Every page on a website is called a landing page. Now we can design a single page landing that can be used for our advertising processes or a combination of multiple pages or landings for website design. Or when we don't want to use a template, or we have a template but the page we want doesn't fit the template structure. In this case, we turn to landing design. Designing a landing involves a series of checklists that we need to complete. The first step is choosing a good design, and the second step is selecting the tools or plugins we need to use. For example, one of the plugins could be Elementor. The next thing is the font that I am going to use. As we mentioned, Elementor does not have Persian fonts, so we need to use Persian fonts that are added via a plugin, or we can manually provide the font ourselves. We have a design here that we have previously created, and now we want to implement it together. It consists of several sections. The first part is the header, which is the initial section at the top of the page, containing the menu's logo and the call to action that we have in mind. Then we have an image, an icon, and as we go down at the end, we have the footer and the form. We are going to implement this design using Elementor Alta. To add Persian fonts to Elementor, we go to the WordPress repository and search for Elementor in Persian. Elementor in Persian will appear for us, which is a package that allows us to add fonts and some styles. Instead, I select this font and proceed to install it. And activate it here. After that, there is nothing special or any specific settings to do. We proceed to design our landing page. We go to the pages section where we had created a page named landing. And we go to edit that and build this landing page. Well, Elementor will load up. We remove the elements we previously created and start designing the landing page from scratch. Based on the design we have, we first need to define a section as the header, which should have 3 parts: the logo, our menus, and a call to action. First, I select a 3-column container. At this initial step, if you look, we have a white background with a box shadow, meaning our header has a shadow. We define this and go to the Style tab, as we learn together, and set a white background for it. We set a white background for it, and also define a border for it, meaning we also define a box shadow for it. Okay, the next step is that we need to place a logo. We select an image and place it here. We choose the logo from the WordPress media library and set it to full size, aligning it to the right. We don't need a caption link either. The next topic is that we can adjust the width of this. We define our logo. We don't need our logo to be that large. We can define our logo based on pixels or percentage. Here I define it based on pixels, saying if my logo is, for example, 150 pixels. Up to this point, we're done with this logo. Now we can make the section we defined for the logo smaller. We can adjust the internal parts of this section or container. We have 2 solutions. We can manually drag it to increase or decrease it to the desired size. Or we can use this section to adjust the layout. We can set its width based on our needs. I suggest having at least 15%. On the right side, 15%. On the left side, which makes 30%, and how much is left. For the center, 70%. In the next section, we need to place a menu here. In the widget, we search for a menu. There's an option for a menu that, if you notice, says, "Sir, I don't have this in the free version, and we need to install the Pro version." So, we proceed to install Elementor Pro. We go to the plugins section and click on Add New. After navigating to the plugin section, we click on the button labeled Upload Plugin, and then carefully select the Elementor profile from our computer's storage and proceed to install it. Once the installation process is complete, it clearly indicates that our plugin has been successfully installed. So let's confidently proceed to activate it. One thing you should always pay attention to is that the versions of Elementor and Elementor Pro must match each other. That means the versions should be compatible, with Elementor Pro being at most 1 or 2 versions lower. Currently, our Elementor is version 3.6.15 and our Elementor Pro is version 3.6.12. Like, if the versions don't match, it will give us an error here and we will need to update our Elementor Pro. All right, let's go back to our Elementor page, save it once, and refresh it to ensure that Elementor Pro is activated on it. All right, if I search for the menu again here, the WordPress menu is activated for me. I drag the menu here, Worten, and it tells me that I can choose a menu. Now, I have a few menus that align with the samples I have here. I want to use these, but I want the style to be right aligned, which it currently is. But I want to adjust the color and other details. I can choose the layout to be either horizontal or vertical. I can choose its arrangement from any side I want, the pointer, or what happens when I hover over it. I know I don't want anything to happen to it. The submenu should also have an arrow icon pointing downwards, along with other settings it has. Let's move on to its style. First of all, we go to its font. Since we have installed the Persian Elementor, we already have the Wazir font, and we can use the Wazir font. We can use it to further customize and refine the appearance. Now, the next issue is the text color that is supposed to be for these menus. I say if its color is black. I can say, for example, I can set its hover color to blue. This means I can set it to blue so that when it is hovered over, it turns blue. Up to this point, I have set my menu. The next step is to knead that call to action or define the button that I have. We learned that if we want to place a button somewhere, we drag it here and place it, and we write the text that is supposed to be inside it. Bad but sab. I want to put a mobile number in my text. I write 031-44155-175. Now it asks, sir, where should it link to? Guys, I have an option, and surely you have seen it too, that when I want to click on a button on my mobile and the dialer page of my mobile also comes up, you've seen many websites where when you click, it goes to the call section and you can contact that person. It has a very small command that I can write. I put a colon and place the number I have in mind, and with this command, I can put my mobile number so that when someone clicks on it on their mobile, it brings up the call mode and makes the call. I set our layout to full width, and it doesn't need an icon. I go to the style, and guys, I'm selecting the colors like this. But you should choose your colors. The colors should be predefined and have a color code that is consistent. And any color code I define. I can set as a general element or a general color. How can I do this? If you look up here, there's a plus sign. I can define a general color. For example, I say, sir, the color, blue. When I create this, if I want to define a color, I don't need to come here to change the color. I click on this globe and the color appears here for me to select. Now, my design has a border radius, so I define the border radius and say, sir, 50 pixels. It should have a border radius, and I also defined a font for it. I said, read the Wazir font for me. And it goes and says, read the Wazir font for me. And it has set the font for me. I have now designed the header I needed in the first step. I move on to the next section. What will the next section be? Well, I have a title and an icon. Yes, I click on this section to add a container, select a double section, and configure its settings. I want one of them to have some space from the top, or I want it to be 30 pixels away from the top. On the left side, I want to place an X. So I drag the image and place it here. I can select my image, and now I go into the files to place what I need. I need this image and I place it here. Well, I can also make any necessary adjustments to this image. I can choose the orientation in which it should be displayed. By default, I can set the width to 100%, which it already is. The second step is the title I have and the text that I am going to place for it. You see, I can choose whether the elements should be at the top or bottom, and later I can change the order of their display. One point we can pay attention to is that right now the text and the title are centered. How can we do this in Elementor? We take the main container, and in the alignment section, we can adjust the alignments from now on, left and right, using the terms align content or justify. I say, sir, I want the alignment of my items to be centered. Now I can go to its style and I say, sir, set the color to the blue I defined, set the font to Vazir, and apply the size I have in mind. Since it's possible, I can also increase the font weight. And I say, sir, set it to 700 or 800. We move on to the next element, which is my text, and I can define its color. Then I go to its font and say, sir, let my font be Vazir. And for example, set the size to 14 pixels. Now I say justify. Now I say, sir, the spacing between my sentences is small. The line spacing is small. I can set the line height spacing to 2 em. Now I can even copy more text and paste it to make the text larger. This editor section that I have gives me this option. In the next section, I simultaneously have a call to action and a registration. I want to add this to this section. I want to place my call to action, drag and drop my container, and a section will be added for me. Guys, one feature I have in Elementor is that I can copy any element I have once or as many times as I need. I also want to drop two call to actions, the call to action that I placed above. Another one is copied from it. Now I want to place these next to each other. In the alignment section, I can define whether it should be in a column or a row. I want to define it as a horizontal row. When I click, you see it places them next to each other for me. Now I want to set one as headlines and the other as registration. I come and write headlines. I also remove its link, and for the other one, I write registration. I also remove its link. Now I move on to styling it. One of them is without a background, but with a border. I can remove its background or set it to white, but instead I want to define a border for it. I say, sir, I want to define a solid 1 pixel border with a color, for example, blue. And also I have a section in these buttons for padding. Besides that, in the advanced or admin section, I can say, sir, come here. What I have is, for example, 30 pixels from the left, 30 pixels from the right, and 10 pixels from the top and bottom, which means give me padding or internal spacing. Another option, besides copying, is that I can style anything that is related to each other, meaning, for example, I can style a call to action with another call to action, or paste a title with another title on top of each other. I mean, I want to say, hey, let the style of this call to action apply to this one as well. When I right click, the paste style option appears for me. You see, this has been copied. Now I want to change its color, meaning I want to say, hey, instead of being white, let it be blue and let the text be white. Now I can even increase their sizes. For example, set it to 15 pixels. This one exactly. For example, 17 pixels. And exactly the same. In the styles, I set typography to 17 pixels. Now I want to change the left and right size again. I want to make it so that instead of 3 pixels, it has a 50 pixel distance from the left and right. I want to say it should have a 50 pixel distance, and I want to do exactly the same for them, aka say 50 pixels. Now guys, another point that exists is that according to the design I have set the colors completely to my own taste. I want the distance between this work and the actions and the text above to be reduced. I can go into the spacing or margin section and give it a negative spacing. Guys, we have the right to give negative margins, but under specific conditions. If an element is internal, meaning it's not a container, we have the right to give negative margins on the right, left, top, and bottom. If the element is a container, we only have the right to give negative margins on the top and bottom. And if we shouldn't give negative margins in certain places, it means it will mess up on mobile. As for padding, we can't give negative values at all, because we can reduce the outer spacing, but reducing the inner spacing is not necessary for us. Now I've built this part of the landing page, and I want to save it so we can look at what I've created together. If we look, we've built the header section, and as I mentioned, our initial section, but entirely with our own colors. We didn't want to follow the command predefined colors, and we can now see the things we need. Now, there are a few things. For example, sometimes this text is stretched too far to one side, and I want this text to have a little less distance from this side. I never have a width element for this text element, but I do have a padding element. I can say, for example, give me 50 pixels of padding from the left so that my text becomes more compact and sits in its place. Okay, now let's move on to the next section, which will be the features. I say, indeed, let's create a new section. I say, sir, we definitely want a single section. We delete it, guys. And when we click add, and this icon pointing downwards. And to the left is for selecting the flex direction of my section. If it's a downward line, it means it displays as a column, meaning any element I add here will be placed below each other for display. And if I select this arrow pointing to the right and to the left, any element I place will be displayed next to each other, which we can change later on, you see? Well, I want the element to go downwards, and I want to apply styles to it. I go to the advanced section first. I give it a 50 pixel padding from the top. I need to give it a color. I say, okay, my same blue color. Now I can reduce the opacity or the transparency of my color a bit, like this. This is how I want it now. I need to place my title. I can copy it here and put it here. Well, for the things I need, I want them to be organized. And I want some space from the top and bottom. Then I use padding. I say, sir, give 60 pixels of space from the top and 60 pixels from the bottom. Now I bring my title to the surface and write features. I can also make the size a bit smaller. For example, I can make it 30 pixels. I need a text. I just copy these so you can get familiar with these tools. Otherwise, we can put the editor meter again and place it. I want to reduce its size, bring the display to the surface. Okay. Now I can also give it a bit of negative margin. And discuss its padding, give it negative margin, so it sticks to my title element. The next part I need is to create these 4 boxes that are here. Guys, I can use the container element. This means I can place another container here and create the boxes I need. There are a series of tools here with me, and I can use these tools. I'm going to create another container in this, and I'll specify that everything I add should be displayed to the left. I need an image element. So I'll upload one of the icons now. Okay. I also need a title element. For example, I'll write feature number 1. Now I'll center it and apply the styles telling it to use a 20 pixel font size. I've set the size and the color is black. The next elements are just these two. Now the next one needs to be a bit larger to fit my design. It should be a little larger and also bolder. I've created this now and I want to give a border to this second container that I've made. I go to the style section and set the background to white. And the next thing I need, guys, is to give it a box shadow. I go to the border and define its box shadow. I set the blur to 20 and lower the opacity until it matches my design. The next thing I need to do, guys, is to give this box some padding. I give it padding from the top and bottom, saying, "Sir, keep a distance of 20 from the top." I can't give 20. From the bottom, I can say more than 20. From the bottom, say 30. From the top. Now I can also duplicate this element, guys, and repeat it. You see? However many times I duplicate it, it brings it for me. Now I can change the icon as well. Let's put our next icon, and from our theme, well, I select an icon. Now, this icon is repetitive, or I can upload another icon and place it, and also place my last icon. Now I can see from the outputs I've taken, our third icon is a clock. We can place the clock. Well, let's save this too, guys. Guys, we completely went with the theme and sample, meaning we didn't want to go for the original colors and wanted to work with the elements to see what happens to each of them. Now, the logo is also placed for me. Now, I move on to the next option, which says, define the headings for me, Mr. C, and display these headings for me in this way. Well, let's create a new container. We can say, "Sir, let it be a single page," meaning a single section from top to bottom. One of the features it has is that I can copy and paste. We've learned this together. We can give padding here saying, "Sir, 50 from the top or more," and 50 from the bottom. We can increase it saying, "Sir, 80 from the top," and 80 from the bottom as well. It also needs some text, which we can paste here and write, "What? Course outlines." The next thing we need is to create these. We can add a container, place a container below this, and now choose its display type. I can duplicate a series here and have them placed one below the other. Now, another thing I can do, guys, is come here, where I have a widget called icon list. I can place an icon for the list of icons, or we can just put a play icon for it and see what its title is. Now we can come and give it a style, and then say that the spacing is okay, and decide whether it should be centered, aligned to the right or left, or whatever we need. We don't want a separator, we can enlarge the icon, make the color lighter. And for typography, we can choose the font, which we set to Vazir. Depending on your needs, we can enlarge it. For example, we can set it to 15, 16 and set the font weight to 600. Now that I've done this, I need to give the entire box a background and set the background to white so that it appears white. The next option is to define a border for it, meaning I can also give it a box shadow. I can define the box shadow from here as well. Let me increase this. Now I'll come and increase the opacity that I'm going to give to my image. Guys, now I want to make a few of these and place them next to each other. Let's say 10 from the top, 10 from the bottom. We can say 20 from the right and 20 from the left. We can say in total, give it some margin from the top, bottom, left, and right. Now I need to duplicate these a few times. How many are in my row? It's 6. Now I can come here into the settings of this container. I can change a series of items that it is supposed to display. You see, I can set it to 6. Now I can define with these and the sizes it has and place each size next to each other. I can also specify if it should be NORB or RAB, and I can choose the alignment for each one. Now, in order for us to increase the number of these, we first need to see if we can use the tools that WordPress itself or Elementor provides, or if not, we have to do it ourselves. We must. We go to the container's appearance, the items it has, we have set for it. You also see the alignment being done. I can define whether it should be spaced or not. Then I can also center align it. Everything should be aligned together. I just need the data and the existing information to be more. On each of these, when we come, there are 3 settings here given to me. It tells me how the size should be, how the alignment of its elements should be, how the order should be. That this is almost the hierarchy we have in CSS itself. I can define its position and enlarge it. You see, I can stretch it and do whatever I need with each one. I can apply these changes to each of these and see what happens. We style it, and you see I was able to adjust the sizes without having to code. Now I can even reduce the margins, for example, set it so that each one has no more than a 2 pixel gap. And this one in the same way. Okay, now guys, I'm going to copy these 3 and place them below each other. I'll duplicate this one and also duplicate the next one. Now, to make the sizes uniform, I can give it a negative margin so that it sticks a little to the top. Since the top and bottom margins are not an issue, we can make them negative. But never give your left and right margins a negative value because it might cause problems in responsiveness. Now I'll make this negative again so it sticks to the top. Okay, I'll save this. We have completely set the data as a sample, so we didn't want to use this example here. It refreshes for us and brings the headings as well. Now, we can add some finishing touches like border radius or shadow to make it look nicer. There's also a button that we can add, so I can add a button down here. Or when it's centered, what would its name be? We write register at the top, register for the course, and we also provide a link to it. We don't want an icon. We go into typography, guys. We set the font to Vazir, define the size, for example, 14 pixels. And we also give it a font weight so it can be a bit bolder. Now in the style section, guys, I can also give it a color. I can choose the color I have in mind. For example, an orange that I don't want to bring from the design here, I can select it. If I choose any of these that I have in mind, for example, this one. The border radius, or the same border radius that I can define for it. Here I say 50 so that it becomes completely circular. I can also manually define padding, saying, for example, 40 from the right, 40 from the shoal left, 20 from the top, and 20 from the bottom. Now, the top frame is a bit too much. I can set it to 15, and similarly, I can make it 15, and instead of 40, I can set these to 60. I can create the design according to my needs. And kids, see, this is what it became. The next step after I created my design is that we need a general explanation. This is from this section that was added. Now, the next part, kids, is the same previous color and some additional explanations. I can easily do this. Come here. I can duplicate or copy this and it will create it for me. I can drag it down. Oh no. Place it in this section. Kids, I can also drag and drop these tools within the page itself. On the right side, it has a navigation for me, which brings all the containers and sections for me. Now I can move these around based on my needs. or get an overview of what's happening with my layers. Okay, now the features I need, kids, this part that I no longer want, right? I'll remove it, delete it. This section becomes additional explanations. I write this. A text is supposed to be placed below it. I can use the text I wrote before, which has a style, and paste it here. You see, it has spacing from the sides. I can remove its padding and copy the text a few times to increase the amount of text a bit. You see? Now, I also need a button for course registration to collect leads. I paste that here as well. It's that simple. And the kids can also create the next part. The page hasn't been saved yet, and it's refreshing. I refresh the page once more, and it's back to the same place. Yes, I have added my syllabus and the additional explanations. What's the next part, kids? It says, "Sir, I have a section for the syllabus that I want to place in an accordion style." Again, kids, let's go and create it. We can also say, "Sir, I want to place a section here for my title." Bhakti, I already have my title created, so I can copy it to avoid styling it again. My text is exactly in the same way. We give it some padding from the top. For example, I say I can give it padding or margin. Sometimes we might want to have a 60 pixel gap from the top, or an 80 pixel gap from the top. Kids, usually the padding and margin sizes of your sections should always be consistent. Since we are just creating this as a test to learn how to work with Elementor, I'm placing it like this as a test. The next topic, we say on the right side, we want to, in this state, I will set your alignment and place it slightly adjusted. Now, I will place a double container on the left side because I want to add just one image. I drag and drop the image element here, upload the image, and place it here. This is my image. Now, I need to use our accordion. We can search for it in Persian or English, and we will build it based on this. The first thing is, "Sir," is exactly the course. Project-based or something similar. We are preparing the previous ones, and we will take a few duplicates from this. For example, we will take 4 of them. Now we need to define the border thickness here. We can even set it to 0. We can define its color, and we should set the title to be more concise. We say, "Sir, the background doesn't need to be extensive," and we want to set its color to black. We click on the active color. To set it to black, we can define typography, and we say, "Sir, set the font to Wazir." We set the font to Wazir, and it's correct for us. We move on to the icon, where we can change the direction of the icon. We can set its color to blue, and we say, "Sir, let both the normal and active colors be blue." In the content section, we can adjust our typography. We assign the Wazir font to it, and we can set it to 14. We give it a small line height, or, for example, 1.8 em. We can also define padding for it. Now, we need to align it to the center. It says we should align it to the center. Another feature, guys, is that we can't do this for it right now, meaning it doesn't give us the option. I want to put a box around each of these so that they have a bordered appearance and are displayed with spacing. Why? But I see that it doesn't give me this option right now. It says, "Sir, you can give a border, but you can't define a box." Yeah. Guys, what's the solution? Yeah. There's something we can do. We have a section in the advanced settings where we can assign a CSS identifier or class or the same ID. I want to give an ID, for example, named FAQ. Now, this isn't FAQ for me. I want to assign it an ID like this, so that we can also learn a bit about writing CSS. Okay, I'm saving this now and coming to this page. It has brought it up for me now, guys, and it has also brought the font To apply CSS, I can inspect it, guys. I'll put it in the lower mode. Guys, how can we inspect? We can press Control on the page. That is, right-click and select Inspect, or if you're on Windows, press Control plus Shift plus C, or Command plus Shift plus C. Now, I'm going to these. I came, guys, to the parent. I have an ID of FAQ. I'm looking for this ID to find it. This is it, sir. Now, you all see the FAQ here. It has added my class for me. Notice that it has added my class. Now I want to say sir on the FAQ class. I want to apply styles to these. I can grab them and say, sir, set the FAQ class background to white, give it a box shadow of 0, 0, 10 pixels. And we need to give it an RGBA. We say 0, 0, 0. And here we can give it a color. Now we can make it lighter or darker based on our needs, whether we want a space above or below on this view. You see it becomes exactly like an Elementor, top, right, bottom, left. Sometimes you want to add space below as well. Give it a border radius of 6 pixels. This way I can easily achieve what I want. And I copy the style that the guys applied. I go to the customization section where it gave me an option to apply my CSS. In this section, I can also apply my style and save it so that it matches the original design. Okay, here I refresh this. We can also change the title and write course headlines as we see. It hasn't read my style yet, it's saved but not read. We need to refresh so that the cache is cleared. To clear the cache, you can use query stream, just put a question mark and start with a letter like this, which will help you delete any remaining cache. You see now it has cleared the cache for me and is showing it to me. We write this too. Course headings. Now we move to the next section. We have also included a testimonial, or customer reviews section, which we can copy from the same section or duplicate it. And now let's use our toolbar to say, move this container I have to the end for me. This means we drag it to the end and it easily goes to the last section. What do we title it? Customer reviews or whoever participated. We remove this because we didn't have a call to action, so we remove the call to action and the text as well. We need to put testimonials. We search for customer reviews. You see the customer reviews carousel comes up for me. I can place it down here. You see it's almost what I want, but again, I need someone to define the changes to the skin of the button, whether it should be bubbly or have its own trick. We want this default setting. Its layout is exactly what we want. We say the slider should change one at a time in each display, and we also say the slider direction should change one at a time. It also has some additional options where we can say add an arrow for me as well. How should the pagination be structured? Should it have arrows, meaning should there be arrows on the right and left? Or do I want pagination or not? We say no, I don't want anything for that. It has a loading speed that we can define and a slow loading, or the same as less loading and lazy loading that we can have for images. Let's move on to the styles. It tells us a few things. The first step we need in this is white has a limit with us kids. It gives us water, no problem. We can define the thickness of the border, give it a color, define its padding, and say if it has 20 pixels of padding on each side. We can adjust its content and typography. We say set it to Vizier. Here I choose the Vizier font and set it to 14 pixels. Let's see how our design looks. It's a bit larger. We can make the design larger. And we can give it a line height of 1.8 in M units. This becomes my content. Okay? For the image, it gives me an option to change its size according to its standard. And for navigation, how the arrows should appear. For my content, it also provides typography for the name. I set it to Wazir. If I want to change the color, I can set it. I can also change the title color and set its font to Wazir. Now guys, we need to add a shadow to this as well, since it doesn't have one. Well, in the navigation we also need to change the colors a bit. You see it has changed it for us now. Well, for example, we set it to an orange, which we can do. For instance, we set it to this. Now again, we need to give it a class or an ID. For example, I want to give it an ID here. Let's see, like what? Test? Moon? Yeah, I save it. It should be saved for me on the view page, so I can see it. Okay, it has been saved now and it refreshes for me. And comes here. This is also for me, guys, and I can give it a border radius style and a box shadow. We defined an ID for it, guys, here, named testimonial. You see, it has been assigned an ID. Now I can come and take any of these active elements and give them a box shadow. I say, sir, define a box shadow for me on this class with the ID testimonial. I say 0, 0, 10 pixels, RGBA 0, 0, 0, and I set the last 0 equal to this, and I can give it a border radius of, for example, 10 pixels. No? I can give it a width of, for example, 90%. No? Now it says I need to set importance for it. Now it changes, it needs to be refreshed once to be fixed. Now we set it to its normal state and make our shadow a bit darker so that the shadow sits on it. The shadow it has will be brought here for us, and I can save this setting. Where? In my customization, I place it here and save it. The next step, guys, is the webinar registration, which has an X and a form. Now I come to create a landing page for it. I can copy what I built here again. I make a copy of this, come here and paste it. It becomes register for the webinar. Now I need to place a two-section container again, register at night image. I'll place the image there, and on the right I want to put a registration form. Guys, I'm searching for a form. I want it to have several sections. First name, last name, mobile number, and email. I say, sir, I don't want the message field. So I'll copy one of these and place it. For the mobile number, both for its label and its placeholder. We also want to write on the button. What should we write? Let's write register on the button as well. Now we need to style it, guys. We can define the spacing between columns, the spacing between lines, and the spacing between the label and the input. We can assign fonts to it, give it fonts, define the size, and apply the specific font style we have in mind. The next option, guys, is the field or those inputs where I say, hey, give it a light border color like this. Well, I can say, hey, give it a 10 pixel radius. And I can also change its color, saying, hey, make it black inside. I set my typography to Wazir. And this font is set to Wazir. This part is also for the inputs. I have a section for buttons. Now what color is it? It's orange. We define an orange color for it, making it more orange. We can define its typography and the font it reads. Setting it for it. Now its color is white, so we set it to white for better readability, or it can be black. This also becomes the registration. We can also give it a border radius of 50 pixels to make it circular. This font of ours is not circular, so we set it to 10, which is too much, so we set it to 5. Here we can also place our form. We need to set an align center so that our form and text, as well as our image, are aligned. This is also saved so that it brings it up for us. This is saved. Now our form is also added, guys. We can give our form a little padding from the right and left, or we can even enlarge our field. I can come and increase the height of the fields a bit, if you see, or increase the thickness if needed. If there's no option, I can go and write some CSS. And at the end, guys, I define a double box for the footer and a mark. It should come to its advanced settings, for example, give it a margin of 50 pixels from the top. I set its background color to the blue I want. I need to place a logo, and I can place a logo. So I put our own logo. Now I want a custom size, and based on the size I set the X, I go to the size section and adjust it based on my needs. Now my logo is black and I want to make it white. For example, I can work with my logo in the CSS filters section with the options it has to achieve what I want. I can even increase or decrease its contrast. You see, these can affect the ash. I can shift the colors towards the whiteness I want. I can increase or decrease its color saturation. I handle these differently to achieve the contrast I have in mind. Now I have a white like this in my output. In the next sections we will talk about how we can copy from the models we wrote before. Here I paste it. I can set its color to white. Okay, I want to place a title section. And let's do something else first, guys. Let's add padding to it, say 50 from the top and 50 from the bottom. Now we add a title to our text, contact us, along with some information. We come and place a header, or we can use one of the headers we created earlier to make our work easier. We paste it here, and we can change its color to white, or maybe the existing orange. We align it to the right and write contact us, or contact information. Now I need to put a list icon here again for the related items. And also include the address and information. I want to put an address here. I can place the text here, for example, Tehran, North Program Organization. I can choose the icon either from SVG or from the options I have. For instance, I search for a marker and place a marker for my icon. Next is the contact phone number. For example, I say 021 4455 175 and its icon as well. I can put a phone icon. Now we will stick to these two and style them. I can define their spacing, the space between them, and I can define what direction it should be from. We move on to the icon. In fact, we set its color to an orange color. We can make its size larger. We move on to the font, setting its typography to Wazir. Here we can set the typography. To Wazir, set the size to, for example, 16 pixels. And change the color towards white so that it stands out. Here we can also change its color. Now guys, to ensure alignment is also applied, we give it a bit more margin at the top, and with this text it becomes aligned. We can also make the title size a bit smaller. For example, set it to 25. This is also aligned. With it, we also remove some of its content so that we don't have any excess. For instance, we can do this as a sample just to have it created in this section, because this font is made very generally and broadly. We say we didn't focus much on making it look similar here. We just wanted to work with the tools to know how we can place our page, or even how we can style it. A very general and easy design was made from it. Yeah? So guys, up to this point, we learned how we can work with Elementor to build a page on our level. Now, as we go further, it will become more professional. We can try our own traps, style it, apply CSS to it, and the rest. Stay with us.